Today we're going to talk about the Apple's plan with M1 iPad Pro. Welcome everyone to the show, The Alarm by JoinTheAvid. It's more about a friendly talk show and a longer, more funnier one than the scripted, shorter videos on my regular channel. So let's start with the M1. I thought of making a video earlier, but then I wanted to see more perspective of more people's. So here are my thoughts. If anybody is buying the M1 iPad Pro right now, thinking that, yeah, it will be amazing, it will be far from that. Because the biggest change that you will be able to see is the Pro Display XDR, which is a fancy name of like mini LED display, which is great though, but only with the bigger M1 iPad Pro. But then again, even if you're buying that one, you're gonna get this display difference only, nothing more. Otherwise, your old iPad Pro 2018 is still enough capable. No need to upgrade. So buying an M1 iPad Pro right now means you will be handed a quarter of our experience of what Apple hopefully planned for us at this year's WWDC. Last year's WWDC is something that just was epic for me at least. Now I'm expecting to fall in love with Apple even more this year. I mean, even deeper. So in the past, I used to hate Apple for a variety of reasons, and that's not to say that I used to not use Apple products. I had Apple products, but I used not to love them as much as you think. But then something happened with the WWDC 2020, and it actually I was like, wait a minute, is it the same Apple that I used to know? That moment when I saw the M1 chip and the future with the M1 chips, I was shocked. And that time I thought okay, now I think I'm in love with Apple. Even though my first favorite Apple device was the iPhone 5S, but I was still an Apple hater. No? But then I fell in love with Apple iPhone 7. Forget about my love story with Apple. Now, I am already in love with the new iMacs, but I also hate the white bezels and also the chin. But it's fine for that price. I think it's fine. It's just kind of like a typical Apple. You just can't do anything. Now, come back to the iPad Pro M1. It has two hints in the form of two features that tells us that it will change the game forever. Now the first one is the M1 chip, and the second one is the Pro Display XDR. And then there are a few other things as well. I will talk about that in the later of the video. And let's talk about the M1 chip first. Why it's a huge deal? Is it because of the performance? Kinda not that much. Not because we have already seen the A12Z's power, which is good enough or even better than some Intel powered MacBooks. We never had complaints on the performance of any iPad Pros since at the very least 2018 model. And on iPadOS, it's very much hard to push that chip to its limit. So what we will do with M1 then? It's humongous amount of power. So what I want to say is the performance deficiency was never a thing with the iPad Pros. So why the M1? The first reason is future-proofing. But is it the one we are looking for? No. The second one is uniformity, some kinda, but is it still the one we're looking for? No. The third one is marketing. It's pretty much easy to get people excited for the new iPad Pros just because they can say oh man, we are giving you the same processor that we use on our MacBooks, the professional computers. They can say like that. It's a good marketing. They can say this iPad is that pro. But then again, this is still not the answer we're looking for, right? So I'm telling you why Apple will do what we are expecting, even though all those points that I mentioned just are true. But nowadays, Apple is doing some crazy stuff anyway, so it's expected. As I told you in the beginning of the video, that if you are buying the M1 right now, then you're getting a quarter of that experience that Apple is trying to provide us. The remaining ones are coming right after the event, the WWDC 2021. So because Apple MacBooks can now run iPad apps, so it's very easy for Apple to make those Mac apps available for iPads as well. Specifically those that are made for the Apple's M1 chip for the iPad Pro M1. I'm talking about the iPad Pro only, not the other iPads. The problem though is the touch interfaces of the iPads. Now we have already seen the iPads have a good amount of support for keyboard and mouse. So just think about it, Logic Pro, Xcode, Final Cut running on iPads, specifically iPad Pro M1 I'm talking about. The portability makes it just amazing. Now on top of that, the iPad Pro M1 supports USB4, which is a mind-blowing thing, to be honest. I never could have imagined all these things a year back, like Apple will do these things with the iPad Pro. Hell no. The first time they introduced the USB-C, I was like a little bit shocked in 2018. But now it's a different story. So now they're like, okay, we are giving you the Pro XDR display, the M1 chip, and on top of that, if that is not everything, Thunderbolt port. Yeah, enjoy the day. It's that thing that made me like, is it the same Apple that I used to know? That even the Apple iPad Pros sell well, but there's hardly a reason to buy it over, let's say, an iPad Air 4. But now Apple will have a big reason and pretty good niches to sell them like hotcakes. Just think about it like this way. Let's say a YouTuber or an app developer or an advertising agency guy is thinking about buying a professional device that can run Final Cut, Xcode, or things like that. You get the point. They will have an option to buy either Mac or iPad Pros. Now, a lot of YouTubers, including me, use iPad as their main computer or maybe video editing machine. Yes, I also use the LumaFusion app to edit all these videos, which is also a cheaper option than, let's say, Final Cut or anything else. But here's the thing, it is not as powerful or as diverse or as versatile as, let's say, DaVinci Resolve or even Final Cut Pro. So now if the M1 iPad Pro can run all these things, then we kind of creators have a very, very, very big reason to stick with the iPad Pros than anything else. We're already using Maxifys on iPads for a very long time, so it is not very hard for Apple to just make those Final Cut and all those things available for iPads easily. Now it is using the M1 architecture, so it's more easy. Now here's the thing. Now why it is very easy for Apple is just because the Mac OS and the iPhone OS, I mean the iOS or iPadOS, is actually based on Darwin. So underneath everything, they are actually similar operating system. Just because the interface are different and they're made for different type of devices, that's why they're different. Like the Mac OS has the non-touch interface kind of thing, where iPads are made for touch interfaces. It's kind of like that. And if I'm a little bit wrong, correct me in the comments below. Now, Apple can also sell iPad Pros. Like if you are a creative guy using Final Cut or Resolve or Xcode, you can also buy the iPad. An iPad has tons of advantages over, let's say, carrying a MacBook anywhere. But that doesn't mean the Apple will put macOS on iPad just for the sake of your happiness. No, not at all. And they will keep the iPad as iPad and Mac as Mac for a very long time. Now, why do you think that they will just come out on the stage and say like, okay, for the sake of your happiness, we are killing the MacBooks lineup and we're replacing it with iPads? Hell no. The MacBook sells pretty well anyway. So why? But rather than doing that, they will allow people to use some apps like the Resolve, Final Cut, Xcode, all these things with touch interfaces of iPads. I don't know how they will optimize those programs to be used on a touchscreen device, but it's not impossible. Look, we've seen Windows laptops with touchscreen and also Surface Pros, which are literally tablets with full-fledged Windows operating system. Now here's the question, is it usable? Definitely yes. But is it like made for each other? Very far from it. Like literally very far from it. Now the same thing goes for the Macs. With Big Sur, it surely looks like it should provide a touchscreen. I mean, it can work with touchscreens, but that still is not compelling enough to put it on, let's say, on an iPad Pro. Just because it will take away the iPad nature of the iPad. Can you remember the ad, the What's a Computer ad?
What you doing on your computer?
What's a computer?
Then it will become a joke on Apple. Seriously. Here is my one dream. If Apple can make a next OS, which is a hybrid of macOS and iPadOS, which will be able to not just run all those macOS programs, but as well as the iPad apps, so whatever you are using to control, like your finger, mouse, or Apple Pencil, then I can say yes. That too can happen in the future. I'm not saying no, but because Craig once said like it's not going to happen, so I'm keeping my dream out of my windows right now. Now coming back to the reality, which seems pretty much logical after the magical concept that I was just talking about. The iPad Pro now have a Pro XDR display, USB Type-C, Thunderbolt port, the 16GB of RAM option for a few specific storage models like the 1TB and 2TB models, and the M1 chip. Now it's very simple. They are targeting the creators. Very simple. You can already draw using Apple Pencil. Now you can edit videos using professional grade Final Cut or Resolve, or create music using Logic Pro, or hell, Xcode is there. Plus, you have the performance. And this is what I am expecting Apple to say on the stage. And this is why they made the iPad Pro M1 like this, with the M1 chip, XDR display, the Thunderbolt port, or even the 16GB of RAM option. They're talking about the display. It can deliver 1,000,000:1 contrast ratio. So think about the HDR video editing or watching something HDR. It also features insane 1000 nits of full brightness and 1600 nits of peak brightness, which is insane. And on top of that, the advanced display technologies like P3 white color, the True Tone, ProMotion. Just think about it. Now, these mini LEDs are 120 times smaller than the ones you can find on the previous gen model. Just think about it. So over 10,000 mini LEDs are grouped into more than 2,500 local dimming zones. Depending on the content, the brightness in each zone can precisely adjust it to achieve an astonishing 1,000,000:1 contrast ratio. I'm actually reading the press release. And on top of that, I'm also expecting them to provide some kind of monitor support. I'm not expecting them to make it like a Samsung DeX competitor, which would be great. But at least let the icon and widgets, which are also expected to be placed anywhere inside the home screen, and the status bar to stretch or adjust itself to fully fit a screen like a typical monitor, if not the ultra wide, which would be a little bit too insane of a thinking. But then again, just at least give us like 16:9 monitor support. So I will be happy. Even the Apple can make a DeX competitor which will look like let's say macOS and work like a macOS. It will just sabotage the sales of MacBooks. So no. Just simply let us, the iPad creators, make use of the full screen space of the monitor. That's what I just want. Also allow us to lock the iPad while I'm using with a monitor. So it will be just how I want it. Now, if all of these things are gonna happen, don't expect all the iPads to support the Xcode or Final Cut and all. It will be exclusive to the M1 iPad Pros. So that's how they can say it's the Pro iPad. Not just another iPad with better display, a few more cameras, Face ID, and unusable humongous amount of power. So now you will say, isn't the highest storage variant with the 16GB of RAM is as costly as the M1 MacBook Pro 13-inch? Is it even worth buying? Yes and no. Look, they're giving you the products like this. If you are a creator using these apps, then you have the option to buy the iPad, where you will get much more better display than the MacBook Pros with full touchscreen support, and it also supports Apple Pencil beside mouse and keyboards. And on top of that, you have better things as well, like 5G cellular connectivity, cameras, like way better cameras, and properly touchscreen optimized operating system with more touchscreen optimized applications. Kind of like a work and play device with full monitor support, if that's coming. And yes, it's still a lightweight, insanely portable device that you can carry around anywhere. Look, we can't define what a computer really is, at least in a very specific way. It's different to everyone because it has so much of use cases. It can do so many things. Like to some, if you can browse and check emails, then it's a computer. If someone can edit videos on it and photos, it's a computer. To some, if they can do just Zoom meetings, then it's a computer. And to some, if they can hack someone else's system, then it's a computer. So we can just say like iPad is a computer. We can't. But if your iPad can replace your computer workflows or make it easier or even better, and then you hardly use your computer anymore, then it's a computer to you. And if not, then it's just an iPad. Simple as that. I hope you liked the episode, and tell me how you like the presentation inspired by Chris Du's channel. A little too much, but then again, yeah, it's fine. And yes, check out my website on your computer or iPad. You will love it. It's stunning. You can also find latest tech news over there as well. So it's just so great, like all in one place. You need to check out. So yeah, that's about it for this episode. Hope to see you in the next The Alarm episode. Until then, bye and take care.